Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
When you went to college for your teaching degree, did you need to know how to do this, like in all of your classes?
Almost all. I was a math major.
Did they teach you
If you're not going into math,
Why?
your friends, look at Mr. Donahue, he have to know this.
Well, no, but like I have friends that were engineering students that had to know that.
Why
did
did
they have to know it, or
somebody,
did they go over it again in college?
so,
Well, it was expected they knew it.
so why does somebody who like does not want to do anything related to math need to know this?
Math or science, no?
Don't know this.
Science is just application. So like, so physics like has like physics does a lot with trig.
Don't know the law of science. You can't go grocery shopping.
Right. I don't. You'll be bankrupt by the time you're 25.
You'll be looking at the
How are you
tomatoes in
supposed
shock.
to do your percentages with your coupons if you don't know?
All right, guys.
Did you say
So,
Come on.
hey guys, again.
how do you say it?
Coupons.
Coupons?
What do you say?
Coupons.
Coupons?
Coupons.
Coupons.
Who's on coupons? Who says
Oh, you can't say you do it.
There's no Q.
Coupons.
coupons?
Okay, guys.
Not
Alright. So, yeah, a lot of the stuff we learned in high school math is more that you don't want to like set your. You don't want to. We were talking about this before class started. You don't want to close doors for yourself. So, like talking about having a high GPA in high school. You're closing doors for yourself. So saying like, I never got to trigonometry. Yeah, you'd be okay in certain classes. You probably have to relearn things. However, the less stuff that you have to relearn, also things like, so like they show up in like, again, I actually was considering being a physics major or math because I like the math in physics so much. So when you get into upper level physics. So I took physics and AP physics in high school. So.
Wait, then when did you get into education?
So I did my math major as my 4-year degree, and then I did my master's degree in education. So like, I had volunteered like in schools like all through college to make sure I knew I wanted to work with kids. But yeah, so because it just depends on your school. Some schools like aren't math majors and then math teachers. So it just depends. It's the way Minnesota did it.
Everyone did that to me last week.
Okay.
Like, every time I
So guys, but at the same time, even if you're not doing anything with math, these are higher order thinking skills for like just like, you know, the bench press isn't required to throw a basketball, but it makes you better for like your mental muscles. So we're flexing our mental muscles right now. We're working out. All right. So what do you guys know about this line or curve?
It's funny.
It looks
Curvy.
Hey guys, give me some information we know about this. Down one, so we're shifting down one.
Ooh, that's got to go to the right. To
Okay.
the right.
Hey guys, so I heard Sam say this is going to be the right pi over 2. Somebody,
It goes up and down by 3.
up and down by 3. Amplitude is 3, up and down by 3.
That's what I'm planning.
Probably the only other thing we need is the period. It's 2 pi. The period hasn't changed because there's no value in front of our theta there, so it's just 2 pi.
Oh,
So since we're shifting right pi over 2, I would choose to put my units in pi over 2s. So that's what I would do with my graph. So pi over 2. Now if you chose to not do that and did something different, this should still work. It'll change how wide your graph is. So here's 3 pi, 4 pi.
That's 4 pi.
And then it Owen mentioned, it goes up and down 3, but we have to remember to shift it right pi over 2 and down 1. So again, if you would like to, who's that? If you would like to do the dotted line first, it would start here, end here, middle, up to 3, down to -3. But then I need to take that whole graph and shift it right pi over 2 and down 1.
to the right.
So, right pi over 2 and down 1. Right pi over 2 down 1. Right pi over 2 down 1.
I think it went down.
Went down 1.
Okay.
Right?
It looks like you went down 1.
Yes, that's what I have.
Yeah. You good.
Yeah.
It just looks wacko. You know?
Okay.
So it's a dotted line or original one, like what it's?
The dotted line was what we started with, and then I do the shift with the solid line. You don't have to do the dotted line, it's just like to visually see what's happening there.
Jeez. That's consistent.
Okay.
Diesel.
Can you do that first?
What? These are consistent. No. Oh.
And I wasn't friends with Mr. Donnie for the college.
When did you guys?
We met our first year of Cheetah. No, our freshman year. I asked him out after the first year of school.
Oh, geez, I
Well,
I died.
I met him like 2 weeks or a week before that, the new teacher meeting.
What you guys do for your first date?
Your dog.
He told me that, well, I was like, what are you doing Friday? And he was like, oh, I'm going out with some of the football coaches. He's playing football. And I was like, oh. And then he said, well, you can come if you want. And I was like, okay. And then, so then he told me to meet him at a bar downtown. And I really never went to bars. Like, cause I was like, straight.
So you went to a coach meeting as a
And
first
so,
date?
yeah, I went, basically. And so I met him at a bar downtown. It was like super late. And this is before the times of cell phones. So I'm just sitting at a bar by myself. It's super late. Like,
So it's like in the movies, like where they're like.
yeah.
Like where you're about to get stuck and then you show up.
Yeah, then he showed up and then it was done. I think just a couple weeks before I said something. But yeah, so it almost went all downhill right away. No cell phone here. That's the wrong thing. Alright. Okay. Okay. So guys, we're going to talk about, so this is kind of getting into a little bit of like Erica's question or some of these questions about why do we need to know how to do this? And at the same time, it's not like you're going to actually, like, we don't need this in the grocery store. You don't have to go and figure out the sine curve for the price of like the tomatoes or anything like that.
We have to.
So,
Otherwise, how do you know if you're getting a good deal?
Yeah. Yo, we can say it's got.
So, okay guys, so we're going to talk about kind of some real life scenarios where you can see sine and cosine graphs, because that is a real phenomenon that happens in the world, like the fact that sine and cosine, like that could actually like apply to a real life situation. Whereas some other types of math concepts we talk about are a little less applicable. So trig actually happens to be. Like adding, right, like that. Like percentages, like, right, never use those. Okay, so just a reminder, we've talked about a lot of this before. So we talked about the variable, like the A is the amplitude.
That's what I'm saying.
Are you okay, John? Okay, guys. So amplitude is how high or how low the graph goes. So,
John, I'm fine.
guys, shh. We talked about the period. That's the length of our graph. So how long it takes for a graph to do a full revolution. So 2 pi over b is the period. And these are for sine and cosine graphs. So like we talked about like the hands of a clock, like 24 hours would be the period of our clock. Talked about the C being that phase shift, that's the left and right, but that's the one that always does the opposite of what we expect. And again, this should all be review right now. And then there's vertical shift. this is our last day of new notes before we start getting ready for a test. So I'm thinking review tomorrow, test Wednesday. We'll kind of see how things go. We'll see if we got through enough of today. I don't know that we'll do all of these notes today, but
Don't do a test Thursday.
Wednesday?
We can't do it Friday.
Let's not do it tomorrow.
I say we do it next week.
We should do it Friday so that John's not here.
It's over on Wednesday.
April. April sounds good.
Yeah.
Because I got Thursday. I don't want
All right.
to stress about that.
So,
The test will be on Wednesday.
I know if she made it Thursday though.
all right. So we're going to talk about how to write an equation if we're looking at the graph. So you guys flip your page and you look at the bottom of your page. I'm going to ask you guys to write a sine or cosine graph from like an actual or equation from a graph. So we have to figure out how to find all these different pieces from our graph that's been given to us or the situation that's been given. So if we're talking about finding the amplitude, again, you can't just like say the high to the low and just subtract them. It's the halfway point of that. So if it goes, kind of a quick little example of this, guys, if it goes, like so, this is my line here. If this is a total of 8 from the top to the bottom, the amplitude would be 4. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say the maximum and minimum, we're gonna subtract them and then cut them in half. Because the amplitude is only basically half of the distance between those two. So we're gonna do max minus min divide by 2. So if you wanna look at the one on the bottom there, we can do, so see if you guys can determine the amplitude for that. Now it says you can do a sine or a cosine graph. We're going to choose to do a sine for that one. You could make that one a cosine graph as well. So we're trying to figure out the amplitude for that graph on the bottom down there. And now you might not have to do this formula, you might just be able to count. There's going to be problems you might not be able to just count your graph. We were just talking about you in our first date.
I didn't say anything. John brought it up.
Where was our first date?
Yeah.
Remember you telling me you didn't want to go to a movie?
No, that was the second date.
Oh.
What
was
did
the
you
first
ask
date,
about
you?
I met you. You told me to meet you at Rosie's.
Attaboy, Mr. Donahue. Run away.
Jeez.
Wait, so he ended up showing up?
He did show up.
Like how long was it?
It seemed like forever. No, it wasn't that. It seemed like forever.
It was like midnight. It was like
I'd say at least. So, if this was 4 to negative 4, we do 4 minus a negative 4 would be 8.
So can't you just do put it in absolutes and just say 4 plus 4? Because I guess you
But there's gonna be times that it's gonna be like let's make this 16, let's make this 2.
That's not
You know,
okay.
so then the amplitude would be
Last.
okay.
Yes,
There's a rhyme or reason. Okay. So, okay guys, did you guys figure out the amplitude down here? Yeah. What is it? 3.
It's definitely 3, yeah.
Okay. So this one, it goes up to 1, down to negative 5. So again, if you weren't able just to count the spaces, you do 1 minus a negative 5 over 2. So 6 over 2, which is 3. So that's our amplitude of 3. Now Erica had a good question about this, like basically like she was trying to like bypass a little bit of the formula, but the graph won't always be just like across the axis or really obvious. Maybe we won't even have necessarily a graph to begin with. We might have to put things into a graph. But finding that amplitude, using that formula if needed. If you don't need it, if you can just see that it goes up 3, then down 3, that's fine as well. And so maybe step 2 would have been good to do initially. It says find the axis midline of the wave. What that means is basically find like the part where it like the middle of the whole graph. And so in that case, if I could draw a straight line, that was almost a curve itself. That's at -2. That's important because it helps you to then see 1, 2, 3, down 1, 2, 3. That's going to be an important step. So I'm going to write that as our next step. Oops, I wanted to go the other way. So the axis or midline of the wave is halfway between the max and min. And now I kind of give it away there. That's actually our D value. We just found the shift down or up, depending on the situation. So we actually just found D in this case when we drew that line. What's D going to be here? D is -2, so it shifted down 2 because it was supposed to cross at 0, and the whole graph shifted down 2.
I have a question.
Yep.
Can't you just look at where it lands on the y-axis?
Where it lands on
And
the
see like how time goes by?
It works well that way. Like, it won't always cross at the y-axis necessarily at the D value. You know, because if it's a cosine graph, it might not.
Okay.
It depends on the graph. So yeah, so you can kind of use that, but you're gonna kind of do this naturally, I think. All right. It says find the period by one of the two following ways. I'm going to tell you just one way. Is basically now we're looking at the horizontal distances between the maximum. So I'm going to write that up on the board up here. We want the horizontal distance between the maximum. Oops, not too many. So how far apart from maximum to maximum, how far do we have to go?
Is that the way that you're showing us?
Yeah, I'm only going to show you the one way, yeah.
What's the other way? Is it confusing and long?
Yeah, it's kind of more of a formula.
Then we're not.
So, it goes
The
from,
other way was looking at the bins. Is that not the other way?
what's the other one?
I thought you were gonna say the other way was looking at the bins.
Well, that could work as well, but I think there's a separate way, but, okay guys. So, we go a 4th pi to 1 1/4 pi. So, because 5/4 is 1 1/4, so how long is that period? 1 pi. Okay.
Where's the Antwerp teacher? Maybe one.
Okay. Now, once I know the period, I still have to go back and find b, kind of like from our warm-up question. So I know the period is pi, and that should equal 2 pi over b. So can you tell what b is going to be?
2.
B is just going to be 2. Again, if you struggle with this at all, you can cross multiply, you can cancel the pi's, this is just 1. So b ends up being 2. So we have almost all the pieces. The last one is C, and this is one you can decide one of 2 ways, depending on which type of graph you want to work with. Like I said, I think this one's easier as a sine graph. We have to determine basically the starting point. So to figure out our C value, we have to look at the starting point. So remember that sine starts at 0, 0. . Like our basic sine graph starts at 0, 0. Our basic cosine graph starts where? At 0, 1. Yeah. Or 0, the amplitude, whatever that happens to be. So 0a, you could say. Now, I'm going to suggest we do this one as a sine graph. On the homework, I will tell you guys which one to do, or I believe I do anyway. And so we have to determine, if it normally would start at 0, 0 and then go up and then down, we have to determine was there a left or right shift at all. Now, don't forget, we also found there was a D shift on this one. So this one shifted down. So my starting point for this graph, so my curve goes like this, right? So my starting point is at 0, -2. You see that? So 0, -2 there. So all that did from the starting, it just shifted down 2. Does that make sense? So there is no C shift because it does the curve the way we expect it to. So here's what we're looking for. So that looks pretty good, just down 2 is fine there. So we're going to go to write this equation now. We should have all the pieces we need. Again, when we have this, it's a sine bx minus c plus d. Now the c value we determined was 0. There is no c. We found out the a value is 3. Oh no.
Gosh.
Okay, I think it's okay.
Shoot.
Oh, schnards.
All right, our b value we determined was 2, right? Now there's no c, so I don't need to put anything in parentheses technically. And then the d value is -2, so I'm just going to do -2 there.
Oh, I did.
All right, so see if you guys can do the next one. I would suggest sign for this one. Sorry, the graph is really hard to read what it is, so let's call it, actually, they have just like whole values there, I realize.
Yeah, I just.
Make them pies. Dang.
Do you want to change them to pi? We can leave them this way.
No. We can leave
Change
it.
them.
Easier.
Change them to pi?
No. No. Wouldn't you have to change it to pi anyways?
No, we can leave it this way if you want.
Oh.
Let's
No, we're leaving it.
Okay, let's try it. I'll let you guys try this one. Because it doesn't have to be pi.